Hey, I'm Randy, and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we help folks find high-value, hi-fi home theater and headphone equipment. And today, we're talking about something that I should have turned on from the beginning, but it sat in a box and I didn't hook it up to the system. And I wish I did. Has that ever happened to you? I don't know. What is it? The Schiit Modi Multibit. I'm having a horrible time trying to say Modi Multibit. That's what we're talking about today. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the Schiit Modi Multibit. Today's sponsor is Nicolas Cage Audiophile Fruit Punch Juice Packs. That's right. Would you rather drink a juice fruit punch pack from Capri Sun Tropicana or Nicolas Cage, who has starred in wonderful and classic motion pictures like Face Off, Con Air, amongst others? Nicolas Cage Audiophile Fruit Punch Juice Packs, available for $10.99 for one, $199 for four. Not a great deal. Available at nicolascage.com, maybe Costco. That sponsor was total fake. Nicolas Cage doesn't actually make or license audiophile juice packs. It's not real. Okay? The Modi Multibit. So when I first got into hi-fi, really heavy. I've always had receivers, I've always had systems. But when I really started to want to improve the sound, I bought a Schiit Modi. It was a DAC. The reason why is because I did a lot of research and it was $99. And from what I gleaned, it was able to make a pretty significant improvement over the internal DAC in a receiver or even a very expensive integrated amplifier. I bought one and I hooked it up. I have an NR1711 from Marantz. It's not an inexpensive home theater receiver and it sounds quite good compared to the Moon by Sim Audio 240i integrated amplifier. Anyway, the Marantz was just about as good as a $3,000 integrated amplifier. So I decided to sell that one, and then I decided, hey, can I up the ante? Can I improve the sound signature of my Marantz, which is already good? So I got the Schiit Modi. Guess what? Sure did. I heard a difference. That's right. I heard a difference from a $100 DAC as opposed to the integrated DAC inside the NR1711 and the Moon by Sim Audio. So I got excited. Cheap way to improve a system, right? If you haven't heard of Schiit Audio, and it's actually pronounced a little bit different way, I don't like to say it that way because some people could say that's dreadful profanity. But Schiit has been around for a while. They are a direct-to-consumer electronics company. They make DACs, they make headphone amps, they make integrated amps, they make power amps, they make EQs, they make a whole bunch of stuff. They're based out of California and Texas. If you do any research into Schiit products, they are synonymous for value components that sound awesome. Search them out on the YouTubery, see what you find. Anyway, they are a important company because they are their own company. They're not part of a huge umbrella of audio companies. They're doing their own thing and they're pushing the limits. And guess what? The people that are in charge of Schiit Audio are actually audiophiles. They care about how things sound. And I talked to Jason Stoddard, one of the owners of Schiit. I will link that interview up here. If you'd like to watch it, you sure can. But anyway, I asked Jason what product he is the most proud of. He said the product he's most proud of is the Manny, which is a $100 headphone amp. And he said the reason he is because it was somewhat of an achievement to get something that sounds that good at a price point of $100. I think it maybe is a little bit more than $100. They have two versions of the Modi. One is, well, a Delta Sigma version. Delta Sigma is how the digital decoding is happening. It's happening on a chip. Multibit is a bit different. There is a way to decode digital signals, the old school way. It's called R2R, so resistors, capacitors, discrete separate components. There is also a way to do that called multibit, and I don't really understand it. If you do, drop it in the comments. From my understanding, What a multi-bit DAC is doing is it's similar to an R2R architecture, but instead of being discrete and separate components, those separate components are then on a chip. So it's a little bit different. Still a chip, but all those discrete components, anyway, it acts like an R2R DAC. I don't know, I'm messing this all up. Why don't you put it in the description exactly how it works. So the Modi Multibit, try to say that 5 times really fast. Modi Multibit is $250. A little bit more expensive, as in double, than the regular Modi. I think $50 more expensive than the Modi S, which is a balanced version of the Modi. This one is single-ended RCA only. The good news is this only has a lead time of 2 to 4 weeks right now. It used to be like 13 to 16 weeks because of everything that's gone on with supply chain and things like that. So if you're interested in getting the see, I can't even say it. If you're interested in getting the Modi Multibit, you may want to put in your order now because who knows what's going to happen with supply chain. What I did is I took a optical splitter out of my Oppo CD player. I ran one optical into the Modi Multibit, the other optical into my Geshelli Labs J2, which comes in around the same price, $50 more, but it has some more inputs. And then I ran both of those analog out of, well, the DACs into the Rotel A11 Tribute. It's a great amplifier. I've been listening to it lately. And then what I did was I played a CD. I played Metallica Black, obviously, and then Nirvana MTV Unplugged. And then what I would do is I would switch between the Geshelli Labs J2 and the Modi Multibit. And I'm also going to talk about some other DACs from memory, but you might want to take those comparisons with a grain of salt because when people talk about how things sound, they may not always be doing the best job of, I don't know, recalling how they sound. But in an A-B comparison, usually that's, at least for me, the way I like to do things because I can hear how one thing sounds and then hear how something else sounds and then talk about the differences. Otherwise, I could just be making up flowery words about things. And that's fine. I'm just not very good at that. So I like to do comparisons. And then finally, I had them running into the Polk R100s, which have become a bit of a reference speaker for me in the near field. Near field. What does near field mean? It means you're listening to speakers closely, probably about 3 or 4 feet or less. So when I was running the optical out of the Blu-ray DVD player, which was playing CDs, that is called a CD transport, or I'm using it as a CD transport. If you're confused by that terminology, don't be, because I was for a long time. Basically, a CD transport is a CD player that you are not using the internal DAC. So you're taking all of the digital to analog conversion out of the CD player, if it even has a DAC, putting it into an external DAC. Therefore, the CD player becomes a transport. Just doing this thing and then send it over to one of these. Some CD players can be used as CD transports. CD transports cannot be used as CD players. The Modi is pretty simple on the front. There is 3 LEDs and 1 button right here. And what that button does is change the inputs. Speaking of inputs, on the back, simple 1 RCA output, 1 digital coaxial input, 1 digital optical input, SPDIF. I think you can call it coax SPDIF too. 1 full-size USB input, 1 toggle switch. This is also a 16-volt DAC. A lot of DACs are 5-volt, 16-volt. So, how does it sound? Well, it sounds great. It does. I mean, the Modi, the regular Modi, is probably one of the best deals when it comes to digital to analog converters. For $100, you can't get really much better than that. There are a lot of DACs from Topping, from SMSL, from FX Audio, from a ton of places overseas. And they're good. DACs from those companies, though, around the $100 mark, have a tendency to be a little bit what I would call harsher, edgier on the top end. Most of them don't do a very good job with the lower mids and the bass. And it's not necessarily the fault of the DAC chip per se, it's the analog output stage. It's what's making the music out. I don't know. The only thing I do know is that I've listened to a fair number of DACs at this point, And one of the things that some of the less expensive DACs all have in common, they're a bit harsh. The Modi Multibit is not. It's not warm either. I would say this is a very good neutral DAC. With that said though, there are some differences, especially between the Geshelli Labs J2. I say especially, not really especially. DACs are really hard to compare because at face value, they all sound very, very similar. And when you're comparing two of them that are both pretty good, there's hard to hear a difference. And what I have to do is listen to a specific instrument at a specific point and then switch them back and forth. The problem is some DACs have different output levels. So if one is a little bit louder than the other one, then well, it sounds different. Most of the time, the louder one is going to sound a bit better. And the Geshelli J2, its output is a little bit higher. There was enough of a difference that even the output difference, I don't think really came into play for my opinion on these two DACs because they're both great. There's a little bit of a difference. That difference for me came mostly in vocals, in the mid-range. The Modi Multibit is a little bit more forward. Not forward in a bad way at all, it's just more forward than the Geshelli J2. The J2 in the mid-range is a little bit smoother. The Modi Multibit is a little bit more, I would say, resolving. But again, we are splitting hairs. It is not that much more resolving, or it's just a little bit more forward. And the reason why I know this is because with the output differences, when I would switch between the J2 and the Modi Multibit, I would have to, of course, adjust the volume. The one thing that I noticed, though, was the Geshelli was louder. When I would switch it to the Modi Multibit, before I even had to change the volume, I noticed the voices seemed like they were about the same level. So with the J2, the soundstage, the vocal, and anything really in the mid-range was slightly back. Whereas with the Modi, it was, I wouldn't say forward, but it was brought more forward. If you're getting any value out of this video, consider subscribing and turning the bell notification on. I post a lot of sales in my community section, so it might be worth it to subscribe, hit the bell notification just so you know when all the good sales are going on, because sometimes they will sell out. You can also like the video if you like it. I don't think the Modi is harsh at all. I think the top end is well controlled, believable. Instrument separation is really good. And instrument separation in the lower mids and in the bass, I think is actually better than the Geshelli J2. And I love the Geshelli J2. A little bit warmer, a little bit more butter involved. But with a critical ear, and when I was A-Bing these, the Modi Multibit had less what I would call smearing, which means the instruments seemed like they were more definitively defined. I don't have a fault. I can't pick the Modi Multibit apart at all. If I'm comparing it to other DACs that I remember, the Modi, I think it has a similar sound characteristic to the Modi, but I didn't really notice any soundstage differences between the Modi Multibit and the Geshelli Labs J2. And that's a good thing because the Geshelli Labs J2 does a very good job of sound staging. Actually, I think the Geshelli Labs J2 does a bit better job of sound staging than the Bifrost. And personally, and I'm sorry, I think I would rather have the Modi Multibit than the Bifrost. I know, I'm sorry, I just would. I like the sound of this one a little bit better. This one seems a little bit more exciting from memory. From memory though. The other DAC that is the obvious comparison would be the new iFi Zen Signature 1. I think the Modi Multibit and the Geshelli J2 are better than the iFi Zen 1 Signature. The Zen 1 Signature had a little bit more bass than the Geshelli Labs J2, and it had more smearing on the bottom end, which means it's going to have way more smearing than the Modi Multibit. The other DAC I would compare this directly to is the Topping E50. Topping E50 is good, and it has a remote. So if you want a remote, then you probably should get the Topping E50. For me though, man, I love Schiit and I love Geshelli, and these would be my two choices. Modi Multibit is really fantastic, and at this point I think I've heard 20, 30, maybe even 40 DACs, and most of the DACs sound pretty similar. And to hear differences, you really got to lean into it. And to hear differences in DACs that are good, you really have to lean into it. Does this compete with the Denafreps Aries 2? No, I don't think so. I think the Denafreps Aries 2 just has such a huge soundstage. Most DACs, period, just don't compete with the Denafreps Aries 2. Not necessarily from a sonic standpoint, but from a musical presentation standpoint. Placement of people and instruments in the soundstage. Denafreps is just a little bit better, okay? Fantastic. I think at $250, one can't go wrong. I wish I had the Modi. I wish I had the regular Modi here so I could A-B them back and forth. I wish I had the Modi, this one, and the Bifrost so I could A-B them, ABC them all back and forth. But I don't. I don't think you can go wrong with the Modi Multibit. I think it's a great deal, and I think you would have to spend probably quite a bit more, all the way up to maybe the Denafreps to hear a difference. Even if you spent double or triple, I still think this one probably going to sound better than a topping or an SMSL. Maybe. People probably not like that I said that. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/ChiitModiMan. Every Sunday night we have Patreon-only Zooms. We have a Patreon-only Facebook group. We also have a Patreon-only Discord. You can also sign up for Tidal Music or Amazon Music. If you sign up, I get a couple of bucks. No affiliate links for Schiit though. So I don't know. Most of the links in the description are affiliate links, but this one will not be an affiliate link because I don't have an affiliate relationship with them. I will link a couple other videos about DACs here, right here. But don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen, maybe, through your new Schiit Modi Multibit and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.